Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is ODT Tech. My name is Dami. Today we'll be talking about context manager in Python, what they are, how you can use them, and also very importantly, how you can create your own in your project. Without further ado, I will jump right into that today. Shall we begin? All I have here is a setup that I have put together, setting up our virtual environment using Poetry, which is why you see pyproject.toml here. If you're not familiar with Poetry, I have a video on my channel. There will be a link in the description for you to know how to set up Poetry and how to activate it as well. I've done all of those for us here to save us time, because we have a lot to look into with context manager. So let's get right into that. So if you're wondering, or you're probably wondering, what are context managers? There is a special keyword in Python called with, spelled like with, like so. Okay, and it's a very powerful special keyword. It's essentially we use context manager context essentially in Python to do when we have object that we need to have like a say setup phase or like preparation phase, and then when we are done we want to ensure that certain cleanup phase happen every time it is used. Okay, and a very common example that you must have used at some point is the open function if you want to open a file or write to a file. So let me demonstrate that to you, then we will get into how we can make our own. So we are going to do an example of, say, let's create a file and write some, hello world into that file. Okay, so what you often find yourself doing is something like with keyword and say open. Let's call this sample.txt. Okay, and we are gonna write to it, and we say as f, which is it's kind of a convention. You could be anything really. So if let's say write hello world. Okay, and if we run this now, you see we have hello world, right? Nothing fancy here. You've probably done this a billion times already. However, what we need to pay attention to here is that if you see, if I come here and do f dot, you see we have a method here called close, right? And it does essentially what it says there. Close. It closes the file as you've written to it, so you don't just keep that in memory, because that becomes an issue when you open a lot of files. You'll probably run out of memory at some point. It's very likely that for some reason you probably forget to do this, which is essentially why there is such a thing, or why we're addressing the context manager today. Without you having to do that, this would happen for you anyways. It's just gonna, close the file for you. Okay, so and that's a good thing essentially, right? That's a very good thing. We have a preparation phase where it needs to actually do all it needs to do to create the file. Now what we are just doing is write to the file. We know that it must create that file for us, and then we close the file for us as well. So if you are wondering, so okay, Dami, I got the point. How can I make my own context manager? Well, I'm gonna show you that now. So I'm gonna leave the comment here. I'll push this to my GitHub, and I'll put the link in the description so you can also use this as reference point. So there are two ways essentially how you can create your own context managers. All right. The first one is using the object-oriented approach, using the class and some special dunder methods in Python. If you're not familiar with what that is, dunder methods are, they are methods that are with Python class object by default, where you have double underscore prefixing a word or a keyword, and then double underscore at the end. A very good example of that is the init method. which is the constructor in Python object-oriented programming, right? If you're not familiar with that, I have a video on my channel. I'll put a link in the description. You can get a refresher from that. So let's get right back into what we're talking about with context manager, how we can create our own context manager with classes. So what do? We need two special methods. So I'm gonna create one, say class sample context, okay? And what we do is to say we can do anything we do on a typical class, but we must have these two methods to make it a context manager. All right, so what are these two methods? One is enter underscore enter and underscore. This is a class, so we need a reference to the instance. We'll come back to adding stuff into this. I just need to flesh it out for us, and then we'll proceed. Then the next one is exit. All right, very important. These two methods are very important to create your context. So if you have this in a class, it would work as a context with a context, the with keyword context manager. So unlike the enter keyword method, the exit takes three important arguments, right? And I will talk in details about what those three keyword arguments mean and what they do. But for now, I'm just gonna describe them here. So we have exe, right? These are just conventional way of how they are named anyway. So we have the type, we have the value, it's called val, and we have the tb, which is for traceback. All right, so now just like we have this, all right, we are gonna use this our own new custom context manager called sample context, like this, using the with keyword. Okay, so what are we gonna do here? Let's just put some print statements here. Let's say hello sample context here. All right, and on the way out of the context, what the cleanup is supposed to do. So let's just say this says by sample context. All right, cool. So how do we then make use of this? Just like we have done up there, but we can decide we want to instantiate this class. If we said sample context, and then we do with sc, all right, and let's say print this is the context. Right. Anyways, yeah, so let's run this and see what we get. All right, look at this. We've got hello sample context. This is the entry, right? And on the exit we said by sample context. That's the last part, and this is actually the context. And this is the context, right? This is where we are using it. Okay, you can see how straightforward it is to create one of this context manager using classes. Another thing you can do here to simplify this code, you don't necessarily have to instantiate this and then assign that to a variable, but I'm just gonna comment this out, and we can just call instantiate the context manager directly like this. Okay, and we should get the same result. Yes, we have the same result. Okay, you might be wondering, all right, like I said, I know this example is probably not very useful in terms of like what it does. It's just printing out there, like nothing really fancy. So we would update this same class, and then let's say it does something a little bit more useful than this. Particularly the objective of that is to show to, like, we have this that says as f. All right, how do we make this happen? So let me show you what we will get if we try to do it as it is right now. So let's say as s, because why not? And if we were to print what the value of s is, right? Let's call this value of s. All right. What would this give us, right? What was this gonna give us? Okay, let's check. Let's see what it's gonna give us. See, it returns none, right? That is exactly what we are expecting. It should give us none. Because there is no context object particularly that we are pointing this at or value. And how can we make that happen? I'm going to expand this class a little bit with its own constructor. You don't have to, but if you need to, it is possible. And also it's an avenue for us to show that, this class can have as many methods as we please. All right, so I'm just gonna say, let's call this file name. All right, file name. We are just gonna, in fact, maybe we'll probably just make it like a wrapper around, what we already have around the open function, or probably not. So let's just assign this and say file name is equals to file name. All right, now, which means this is bound to the instance of this class now. So here, if we wanted to have a value for this instead of none, okay, so we say you return the value. That's all you need to do. You just return the value that you want the context bound to, right? So we are passing that in the constructor, so we are bounding that. Now check this out. We still have the same thing like we have here. We are going to now have to add the file name because our constructor now takes a file name. Let's call this, okay, let's say example. Let's just call this example. All right, that's all we are gonna do for now. And let's check out what the result. Remember earlier, before we added this, the value of s was none. Okay, so if we were to run this same code again, what are we gonna get? All right, check this out. Now we get example. All right, voila, just like that. In fact, as you can imagine, you could literally be pointing to an object, right, where you can reference other methods of that. That is how you would do it if you needed to, reference that. Okay, so and that is how it works. That is how you create your own context manager, really, with this approach of you using a class. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about what each of these arguments in the exit takes, really. So what that means, what each one of these does essentially is, like I explained earlier, this is a type of the exception, this is a value of the exception, and this is the traceback of the exception. I'm gonna demonstrate something here just in a case where we are gonna actually have an exception. All right, so a zero divisor exception. We are not gonna do anything more than that. So if we did say, okay, in our context, we want to say, let me comment this out for a second. So in our context, let's leave this. Not that we need to do anything with it for now. So let's say here we are going to say zero division. So let's say 1 divided by 0. Obviously, as you can imagine, this is going to throw an exception, all right? But let's find out. Let's see. See, we got an exception, and this exception came because of zero division exception, right? And what this exception is essentially saying, you can't divide anything by 0, right? It's impossible mathematically, right? So that's why you get this zero division error. All right. So, and if you notice, we are able to see this is a trace back, right? This is the exception, all right, and the value. All right. So this is the point of why we have this in the exit. And if you see, as you can imagine, this is not happening anywhere in this our own context. It is happening within the context manager, where we are actually making use of this context manager. I know that's a bit of a tongue twister, but I hope you get the idea. So that's how you can actually create a context manager using classes. So earlier I mentioned there are two ways you can do this, right? So there is the approach of you doing it with the like we've done it with the classes, and there is also the other approach of doing it with a function. Okay, so how do we make that work? So I'm gonna show you how we can do that in this next step. So again, I'm gonna comment this all out, and we are gonna try and do what we've done by writing just a function. So let's move this up a bit, or rather let's do it the other way around. Let's push this down, and I think I should push it off the screen so we don't get distracted. All right, so how do we, if I wanted to create my own context manager using a function, how do I do that? So there is this built-in library called contextlib. So you do from contextlib import context manager, which is a decorator. All right, if you're not familiar with what a decorator is, I'm going to be adding another video to this channel. You can learn about how to create your own decorators. So anyways, let's get back right into this. So to use a decorator, you have the, before we get that, let's catch ourselves for a bit there. So what we are going to do next is to say, let's create a function. This is how we want to do this without using classes, right? So let's create a function. Let's call this another sample context func. All right, I mean, we've created our function, but this is just like every other regular Python function anyways, right? So we want to make this a context manager. So let's just say print yeah, I know, not very useful again. So we will, to make use of to turn this into a context manager, we are just going to apply this decorator on it, and we are not done just yet. There is another concept of how we would return stuff, which I'll show us next. So when you're using a function as your context manager, as opposed to using a class, you have to bear in mind that it expects that you are going to return a generator, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna brief you essentially what a generator is. Generators are essentially, essentially like an iterator. So there's this keyword called yield, all right, and what that does is it does not return the value immediately until it's being evaluated, right? So don't worry too much about that. Just understand that if you are using a function and you want to make it a context manager, you have to yield a value, right? So let's just say we yield a string here, say the context. All right, so if we run this again, this should work. There we go. All right, so we have this, and what that means for us, if you notice something here, we say we are returning, more like it's not returning the actual value, but we are yielding the value, which is a generator. And here we are not reading it out like we did earlier. We just using it with the with keyword here, and we say in the context, and as you can see, this is a function, and in the context we did not get this, the context. All right, and how can we get that? We say as let's call this as s again, and if we print s again, we should get the context. Ooh, sorry guys, we should get the context, and there we go, we have the context. All right, so yeah, that is pretty much how you can create your own context managers and how you can use them. There is a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot of use cases for this. You could use this for a lot of things. If you are writing your unit test and you want to have some kind of mocks that you use often, and you want to have your cleanup setup outside test cases, you can also use it for maybe you have some IO network that you're doing networking in your project that you have to do, make a request, and at the end of it you want it to close the connection. The use cases are endless really, but the purpose of this tutorial was to give you you know the foundation knowledge of how context manager works, and what you can use them, what they are used for, and how you can use them, and the various ways in which you can create these context managers. I hope this tutorial has been very helpful for you. If you find it very useful, please remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, so other people can also benefit from this tutorial as well. And yeah, that'll be all for today. Happy coding. Bye for now. Cheers.